What is your worst fear? Do you even know? If you said something like spiders or clowns, that's kid stuff. Take a second try and try again. Don't tell me things like heights or small places either. Those are a little better, but I asked for your worst fear. We all love a good story, where everyone is plagued by that which they fear most. And every Harry Potter fan has imagined what their boggart would be. But the simple truth is, if that stuff were actually real, none of us would be seeing Snake or mean teachers. Most people don't actually realize their worst fear until they're facing it. Our minds tend to reject the unthinkable. We would rather believe that animals are our biggest threat and the creatures of the night does not exist. Maybe it does. Maybe it's more complex than a single entity. Maybe it's a tragedy personified, and it lives in us all, waiting. Maybe it's the woman standing in the road while an ambush lies in wait. Maybe it's the hooded man following that drunk girl home. Or maybe it's that unmarked van creeping by that school. The creature isn't always intentional. Sometimes it's just a horrible mistake. Comes upon us like tornadoes or earthquakes and floods, famines and droughts. It's our deepest fears buried in the farthest reaches of our subconscious. We envision a monster lurking in our closet because that's exactly what it is. We know it's lying in wait, so we take precautions. We lock our doors, build our shelters, and take our weapons. But for how long can we wait? Or can we even survive? In today's tale, we can see if those kids survived or not. Can they survive their worst fears? Or would they succumb to their despair in the dark corridors of Leafmore High? Stay tuned. Let's meet the young victims of the darkness of the night. Let's meet the young victims of this cursed night. Kenny Matthews, the 19 years old kid, an athletic and physically strong, a fast runner, but is that enough for him to survive? A time when his skills and talents is needed the most. Kenny is a courageous man with little of fear, but is it courage or foolishness? You decide. Next, Shannon Matthews, the sister of the young man, 17 years old. Shannon, so strong-willed, intelligent and calm for such a dire times in the group. She do consider to be the smartest. Her nature is completely opposite to that of her brother Kenny. Kenny is so impulsive and arrogant, irresponsible, immature. Shannon, on the other hand, is mature and responsible. Her only excess is in her caring for others. Would that be her downfall? Or would that be the only thing that saved her life? Stanley Jones, 18 years old, the best friend of Kenny Matthews. He's a relaxed and a laid-back personality, shown him to be a man that depended in a time so dire, does not panic, and you will find him in a time of need. He easily can calm anyone. He might be not smart of books, but he is a smart of street. A dire time for such a character. But would that be enough for him to survive? Or would the darkness swallow him into its fold? And the young Josh Carter, a 17 years old kid, stuck in the darkness and the evilness of Leafmore High, such a curious student, a wannabe journalist, a shy soul but very optimistic, kind-hearted and bright, a creative and imaginative soul. He is very curious, but would curiosity be his downfall? And last but not least, the beautiful Ashley Thompson, the 18 years old girl, the romantic interest for Kenny Matthews. In a first impression, you would think she's such a superficial girl, just a model and caring for her beauty. But a little you know, such Ashley would surprise you to be timid and strong-willed. Always tries to act with great maturity while playing it cool in every circumstance. She has a heated character and does not allow it to be pushed around. A strong girl with the soul of a warrior, great in self-defense, martial art enthusiast. Probably to vent a furious and aggressive character. Would her expertise in taekwondo and defense martial art and guns save her in such dangers? Or would she pass away, saving her friends? Our little heroes, their story begins as Kenny Matthews, the popular jock school basketball player, stays late in the school gym to play basketball. His beautiful girlfriend Ashley Thompson calls him and diverts his attention from the mysterious figure running off with his gym bag. Kenny pursues the thief, unaware of his surroundings.
Hey, what the? Where's my bag? Oh, man. creepy down here. What the hell?
And without clear thinking to think maybe it's a trap, that leaf led him behind an iron gate leading to an old mansion. He finds a basement, which in it there is a secret passageway, and he hears screams from down under. The courageous heart inside of him, fearing that maybe somebody needs help, maybe he can help them. So he goes underground, down under the corridors, and discovers glass cases with plants and other experimental subjects. He opens a seal-locked door at the end of the hall to find a student there. Dan. Dan has been used as an experiment product. He was locked in the underground lab. Kenny convinces Dan to leave with him, but they are attacked by a giant mutated creature. Kenny, scared and unaware, almost dying from the evil mutated creature. Dan gives his life to allow Kenny to escape, hurrying up the ladder. At the end of the corridor, Kenny is locked in by the mysterious figure in the basement. The next day, Ashley informs Kenny's sister Shannon Matthews that her brother did not appear yesterday for the date. Shannon says that Kenny didn't come home either. Both girls worried and curious that maybe Kenny must be in trouble and they must find a way to aid him. They visit Josh Carter, the school videographer and would-be detective, to ask him if he knows of Kenny's whereabouts or have any clue. He tells them no, but suggests that they stay after school to look for him. After everyone has left and all the doors are locked, they began their investigation through the school, the empty corridors and rooms, thinking they are all alone, unaware of the dangers that lurking behind. They encounter the monsters and find their biology teacher, Mr. Walden, quickly smashes a window, revealing to them that the monsters are weak to sunlight. Walden claims he knows nothing about what's going on and implores the teens to go find Principal Herbert Friedman. Walden then leaves after vaguely claiming he has something to do. The young children weirded out by the fact of what had happened. They could not realize that how could this professor teacher know exactly how could he know that the monsters could be defeated with the sunlight? They could not trust their professor, but they have no choice but to listen to his orders. At Walden's suggestion, they go looking for the principal at his office in the classroom wing of the school. Later then, they found Stan Jones, the school stoner. If he knows where Kenny is, they ask him. He does not, but upon hearing Kenny's missing, decides to join them in their search for his best friend. In their way to Friedman's office, they discover that he has a twin brother, Leonard Friedman. They also find a note informing the janitor that the principal Friedman is in his office at the school library. Upon meeting him in the library, the four inform Herbert Friedman of the monsters plaguing the campus and of Kenny's disappearance. He then being composed and calm, informs them that he will find Kenny and that they should leave immediately. He tells them to speak with Mr. Garrison, the school janitor, to let them out when they visit the janitor. He has been ripped apart and is in a bloody heap on the floor. One of the students, the young kids, takes the liberty of watching security tapes in his office. Through the VH tapes, they learn that Friedman took Kenny's bag and lured him into a secret passageway in the basement behind the school and locked him in there. So that mysterious figure who took his bag from the beginning was Friedman, Herbert Friedman. Later on, while watching, they also find out that there was someone else investigating last night and he got chased away by the monsters and that he accidentally let them out of the basement, which explains why they roam around the school building. On the second VHS tape, they say Ken is still alive and decide to rescue him. They also spot Elizabeth Lucy Wixon, the school nurse, pleading for help as she is trapped in the nurse's office. Shannon thinking about it, that Garrison had all these VH tapes. Who was he? What did they know about him? Well, he was a janitor and a security guard of Leafmore High. He finds himself. It is unknown whether are there more people working as janitors in the school, but the students only saw him. He is a middle-aged man with a brown flashy mustache. He seems to have worked in the school for many years with dedication and cold practicality, silent and obedient to the duties entrusted by the principal, Herbert Friedman. He has a very controlled behavior in front of the monsters, which implies that he was aware of the experiments of Herbert Friedman. In favor of this thought, the children knew that was true because in his office he has already been loaded with shotgun and bullets, and he carries a handgun with him. Why would he have that in a children's school, a high school, as he was ready for something, an invasion of an entity, a creatures. Moreover, still in his room, there are monitors of the school surveillance system. Given the cassette recordings, it is difficult to think that he wasn't aware of the kidnapping of the school children. Later on, after they see Elizabeth Lucy Wixon, the nurse, pleading for help as she was trapped in the nurse's office, they travel through the cafeteria wing, facing challenges after a challenge to get to her and get some answers. Can they trust her? But what can else they do? Nothing. When they find Nurse Wixon, she appears to be out of her mind. However, in her mindless babble, she reveals that Herbert was doing something unsafe. The students use a hand wheel. They find an infirmary to access a hidden door in the administration block, which is now in complete ruins. They learn that there are secret basements hidden underneath the school and figure out that that's where Kenny is. He must be there. They encounter Walden again, frantically searching for Friedman. They inform him that they've seen Friedman in the library and that they need a key to the auditorium. Walden gives them the key and runs out. In the school amphitheater, they find glass pictures spanning for decades on the wall. In each one, Principal Friedman appears to be the same age. They thought about logically it is impossible, but that day, that night, nothing seems logical. What is happening is beyond logic. They fire up the theater screen and watch the tape that was inside the player. It reveals the Friedman brothers doing tests on human subjects and the subjects mutating into monsters. It also shows Leonard Friedman injecting himself and watching the skin on his face rapidly changing into something grotesque. So their theory about before was correct. Later on, they continue forward. The students had to fight a monster, a hideous, ugly monster named the Queen, a creature of nightmares. The Queen is a monster generated by a genetic mutation. The fights with this monster can be considered difficult, very difficult by every standard mean. Appearance. Oh, let me tell you about the appearance. Possibly the most revolting byproduct of Motophilia experimentation. The Queen is likely a type 4 mutation, born by the merging of infected human female and a lesser creature, possibly an insect, larva, or a parasite worm. However, it could also be a type 2 mutation, as the body itself hasn't been merged with any other animals, only produces them, and its members have hypertrophy. Its misshapen body, too fat and swollen to move, manifests both animal traits and grossly enlarged primary sexual characteristics. Its bloated warm body, aside from two obese human breasts, it has a vulva-like opening that covers most of its side, and this orifice, kept stretched by the monster's left arm, expels a swarm of maggots the size of a rat. The right arm is large and disproportionate, aptly used to slam enemies and to shield its only weak spot, its disfigured human head. It is unclear whether the Queen is the only one or three different specimens, because they fight the same creature 3 times. But later on, they learn it is different creatures, because it looked too bloated and clumsy to switch locations so easily. Also, 3 battles with such one creature. How can one creature endure such wounds, even for a mutant? Plus, while they go back to these places again and again, they still see the corpses they have killed. After fighting the Queen, once in the amphitheater, once in the dormitories, and once in the basement, they use a ladder under an elevator shaft to access the basement. While climbing down the ladder, the elevator falls, and if one of them had forgotten to use the safety mechanism on the elevator would fatally crush whoever is in there, but luckily they did not. While in the basement, the students encounter the second phase of students transforming into Arpor Trouble. They fight through and manage to reach the prison where Kenny is being held. Upon walking in, the principal Friedman unleashes a toxin, rendering them all unconscious. When they wake, the surviving students are all in behind bars. One of them discovers a metal hook left in their cell by the neglecting Herbert Friedman. You might think, how a man by his stature, smart intelligence, be so reckless? Well, I need to tell you, his plans was going all over the place. The monsters should never leave the basement. It was all under control, but he need to find that someone else who caused all of that. So of course he was panicking. Later on, they give the metal hook, to Kenny, who with it he reaches a circuit breaker and pulls on the cords, unlocking the cell doors. Kenny then informs them that they have been injected with a serum, and if they are exposed to light for too long, they will mutate. Kenny suggests to meet up with Mrs. Wixon, believing she can help them out. They use a big pair of bolt cutters to retrieve their items and weapons. The students then fight their way to the surface and back to campus. They find Mrs. Wixon all bloody and beaten, presumably by Mr. Walden. The students once again ask Mrs. Wixon for help, telling her they have been infected. On her dying breath, she told them that there is an antidote that can save them, and that it's hidden inside Friedman's secret lab, which can be accessed through the garden entrance of the basement. Having no other leads, the students decide to cut down all big padlocks on the school ground with the bolt cutters they stole. They reach the dorms, which have been abandoned for decades, as there were rumors of people disappearing there. While there, they recover a safe with Alan Gardner's diary and library office key inside. In the diary, this person, Alan Gardner, one of the past of victims of the Friedman brothers. Alan reveals that Herbert had a twin brother named Leonard Friedman, who went missing. He reveals that Leonard and Mrs. Wixon were married, and that the two, along with Herbert, were at least 100 years old. The survivors, young kids, were astonished and weirded out. How could that be possible? How could that humanly be possible? That their principal is more than 100 years old. They continue reading, stating that the Friedman brothers managed to make themselves immortal and immune to aging after experimenting with a flower they brought back from Africa called Myrtophilia. They kidnapped and tested the serum in the students. They remember watching the film reel earlier, show that Leonard tried testing the serum on himself, but he got herbally mutated. Alan points the students to the direction of Friedman's lab, revealing that it's behind a big door in the basement that can be opened by finding 4 statues with hidden mechanism on them that can be used to open the door. Alan attempted to find out what was behind the door before himself became another experiment for the school headmaster, confirmed by a note found earlier. With the new acquired key, the students break into Friedman's hidden office and retrieve one of the statues needed to open the big door. And Reels really decided to go look at On their way back to the courtyard, they encounter Mr. Walden again. They inform him that there is an antidote to the infection, and when they show him the map to the basement, Mr. Walden becomes crazy, coughs up a huge amount of spores, revealing he is long infected in a crazed state. Mr. Walden takes off with the basement map and locks the students in the library. However, they quickly find their way out. After watching the reels reel, they find a code that they use on a gate in northwest part of the school to enter the gardens behind the school. The path leads them to the same house that Kenny encountered the previous night. They enter the basement through there and use the status they've collected to open up the big door. Walden was there in time to see the big door open and enters it. He threatens Herbert Friedman, who is holding a briefcase containing the antidote, with a gun. Friedman refuses to give it to him, claiming Walden is too infected to be cured. Walden, clearly losing his mind, shoots, killing Friedman in the chest, and takes the briefcase. Just after he injects himself with the antidote, he is impaled by a horribly mutated Leonard Friedman. Leonard then tosses Walden's body around the room before slamming it into the door. Angry and grieving, despairing, Leonard looked into the survivors, and that enraged Leonard, blaming them for Herbert's death, who decides to punish the students severely. The students, however, fight Leonard, cutting his roots that is holding the roof that was acting as a support beams. By destroying some of the roots, the roof began to collapse, crushing Leonard and making the way for students to reach the ground floor. It is revealed that Leonard was situated right beneath the gym. The survivors inject themselves with the antidote, but then Leonard is revealed to be still alive. The students continue to defend themselves long enough until the sunlight appeared and completely burned Leonard's skin and organs off, leaving behind only a skeleton. With his death, the roots dry out and the students are finally safe. The 5 students survived, breathing heavily, unable to comprehend how they survived the day. Stan recovers the briefcase while bending down to get it. The Professor Walden monster rises above to attack. Stan jumps back and pierces its head with a bullet. And that is the end of the story. But there is some things we do not understand. Some information we need to solve. What was Herbert and Leonard's goal from everything? What we all know yet is that he is the principal of Leafmore High School, and he has a brother, Leonard Friedman. Friedman brothers are responsible for the alleged kidnappings of missing students, both in the past as well as the present, as chronically, if we calculate his age before he dies, he was 144 years old. So let's go back into his history. The Friedman brothers were close and shared a common and mutual interest in both science and Africa. This is where they spent time collecting unknown plant specimens. However, their lives changed when they found the Myrtifilia plant. It was a mysterious plant that emitted spores with immense regenerative and youth restorative properties. Herbert and his brother Leonard experimented with the plant in the hopes that its regenerative capabilities could be transferred to a human body. Sadly and unfortunately, their attempts at gaining recognition and grants for their work failed, as their experiments were considered too morally and spiritually controversial. But some brotherhood was interested in an unknown brotherhood was interested in the research, but they rejected their help. The brothers needed a way to test what they'd created without anyone knowing, and in a desperate attempt to prove his theory, Leonard decided to inject himself with the serum he and his brother had made before exposing himself to sunlight. Unfortunately, the spores reacted in a way that neither of the twins expected. Leonard's body began to mutate to the point that Herbert had to lock him in a lab underneath their estate, in the depths and underneath the school, without any proper fund to build a lab to create a cure for his brother. He used his remaining asset to build a high school so he could use students as experiments to get a cure for his brother, but even the students weren't enough. Desperate, Herbert sought the unknown brotherhood, and they sent him further lab rats for his experiment. Herbert began experimenting on students alongside Leonard's wife, Elizabeth Lucy Wixon, hoping to find a means to reverse the process. As time went on, without a cure, Herbert and Elizabeth eventually exposed themselves to the spores. Fortunately for Herbert Friedman and Leonard's wife, Elizabeth Lucy Wixon, they managed to have some splendid results. They found a source of immortality and were able to make use of it. Although they had become immortal, they had to avoid direct sunlight. One last thing that I am curious about is Elizabeth. What do we know about her? Chronically, she is 138 years old, but her looks like she is in her 60s. Elizabeth Friedman Wixon, known to the students as Mrs. Wixon, she's a school nurse of Leafmore High. Over the course of the events, it is revealed that not only is she married to Leonard Friedman, but she is a mother too. She was born on April 19th, 1865. Not much is known about her life until the age 20. She married the researcher and botanist Leonard Friedman, another native of her hometown, Rock Road, Iowa. It seems that Elizabeth was both practically fond and obedient to her husband, never appearing to question Leonard's obsession with the Martophilia. Elizabeth even went as far as taking part in several of the Friedman's twins' experiments, which according to them could give eternal life. So when the Friedman twins eventually went on to found Leafmore High, she assisted her husband and took up the role of a student nurse, tending to students, while also serving as a potential assistant in the twin student kidnappings. However, when Leonard decided to test a new serum of the Martophilia directly on himself because they could not keep up the experiments by themselves, Elizabeth protested for her husband's action. She wrote a letter to Herbert, which begged him to stop his brother from injecting himself. Herbert could not dissuade Leonard though, and her husband injected the last of the serum he had directly into himself. Sometime after this injection, but before Leonard's eventual mutation and immobility, Elizabeth fell pregnant with Jedediah Friedman, who was born mutated and disfigured, probably due to the instability of Leonard's cells. It is unclear whether Elizabeth was aware this could happen. She took care of her son, telling him stories until he'd go to sleep and trying to distract him from the terrifying nightmare that he had every night. Eventually, when Leonard began to show the effects of the serum, a slow and grotesque mutation that eventually turned him into an immobile human-plant hybrid. Elizabeth and Herbert would lock him in the labs beneath to prevent from being exposed to any more light. Her loyalty for Leonard never faded. Desperate for a cure to the terrifying metamorphosis Leonard underwent, she began to assist Herbert with the experiments he did on the young students of Leafmore High, with the goal to eventually create a serum that would invert Leonard's transformation. However, Elizabeth and Herbert's efforts were slow, and they began to realize they'd never survive long enough to create a cure. So in 1921, they injected themselves with a synthesized serum of mortophilia in order to obtain eternal life, knowing that any exposure of sunlight could cause them to horribly mutate. Elizabeth continued to assist Herbert and devoted nearly a century to the research on the mortophilia flower to save her husband. She even neglected her child, leaving him alone in his home, although by the start of the 21st century, even her dedication started to fail, and more likely that her child has died from the neglect. Now we ended all the tie loose ends. See you in the next chapter. Hello guys, thank you so much for watching my videos. I hope you liked this video. If you do, please make sure to subscribe, like and comment down below. It does really help the channel. I hope you can support this channel as much as you can, so for me to keep on going doing this content for you guys and keep popping them up. Make sure to subscribe not to miss any future uploads. Thank you so much. See ya.